We're going to use what we know about transformations to shift all these exponential graphs. So our parent function in this case is y equals 2 to the x, and that was the first one we graphed on the front side of your paper. And then we're going to transform these things. So up, down, left, right, stretch them, make them thinner, all of that stuff. These transformations happen, to our intercept, remember that point 0, 1, and our asymptote. Remember that was y equals 0. Those are the two things that we're going to think about moving left, right, up, down, and that kind of thing. We will be doing a little bit of table of values, especially when we get to the stretching ones, because it'll get a little weird. So let's check out number 4. We have y equals 2 to the x plus 1. That transformation of plus 1 is going to take us up 1. So instead of having our intercept at 0, 1, we're going to have our intercept at 0, 2. Instead of having an asymptote at y equals 0, we're going to have an asymptote at y equals 1. And at this point, I mean, if you wanted to plug in more numbers, you could, but remember, we know our basic shape. It's heading up like that. It's flattening out like that. So that's good enough. If you wanted to plug in a couple more numbers, you most certainly could. Do a little xy table, plug in -1, 0, 1. You would end up with 1.5 here. When you plug in 0, you end up with 2. When you plug in 1, you would end up with 3. So hopefully I got those mostly right. All right, so the domain, still all real numbers. And our range, that has shifted up 1, because remember our asymptote shifted. So our range is greater than 1 instead of greater than 0. All right, let's check out the next one. On this, we have 2 to the x plus 3. That plus 3 with x is going to move it left 3. And the -5 is going to move it down 5. So instead of our point 0, 1, we're going to go left 3. Do this in a different color so you can kind of see it. So instead of our point 0, 1, we're going to go left 1, 2, 3, and down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's the point we wanted. Hopefully, did I count that right? Yeah, okay. Our asymptote, it is also going left 3, which doesn't change anything, and it's dropping down 5. So down here. All right, I'm going to erase some of those points because we don't need those. Those are just me counting. All right, and our graph is going to do the same thing. We know our parent function kind of goes up like that, flattens out that direction. And for now, that's good enough. If you wanted to plug in some more points, you most certainly could, but they should fall into that general shape. Our domain is all real numbers. And this time, remember, we shifted our asymptote down, so our y is greater than -5. All right, let's check out this last one. Transformations here. We don't have any left to right transformations on this. We're multiplying by this -1/2. So the negative is going to do what we would expect. It's going to reflect over the x-axis. And the 1/2, that could either stretch or flatten it. In this case, it's going to kind of flatten it down. If it were a 2 or a 3 or something, that would kind of stretch it out. Okay. Now, for these, I definitely recommend doing a table of values so you can see. I mean, we definitely know with a reflection of the x-axis, instead of going up like this, it's going to be going down like this. So we know that this is our general shape, but to get the exact points is better just to do a table of values. So graph a couple points here. So we're going to do -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. So for this first one, we have -1/2 times 2 to the -2. Remember, 2 to the -2, that was 1/4. So we have 1/4 times -1/2, so -1/8. Then we have -1/2 times 2 to the -1. 2 to the -1 is 1/2 times -1/2 is -1/4. -1/2 times 2 to the 0. 2 to the 0 is 1, so 1 times -1/2 is -1/2. -1/2 times 2 to the first is going to be -1. -1/2 times 2 squared. I guess something I didn't mention as we've been plugging these in, remember, for order of operations, you have to do the exponent first. and then multiply by -1/2. That's really, really important. Otherwise, you're not going to get right answers. So we get 4 times -1/2, which is -2. So we're going to plot these points, -2, -1/8, which is very difficult to plot, -1, -1/4, 0, -1/2, 1, -1, 2, -2. Okay, and notice it's a little bit flatter. And it is going down like we said it would. So it's gonna start accelerating down. If you wanted to plug in 3, you could, and you'll see it's gonna start heading down. And then up here, it's gonna flatten out towards 0. So our domain is still all real numbers. And this time our range is below the axis because we flipped it. So y is less than 0. So we can do all of our same transformations to this. Just remember, these transformations happen to the point 0, 1, and our asymptote. And if you have something out in front, it's probably best to set up a table of values. It's just going to be easier. We'll take a look at some real-world examples of these in the next video.